Welcome to the DonDiva Coaching Talk Radio Coaching Evening Edition. We'll start off the evening off with the dynamic coaching, a hot topic about hostile separations, hostile divorces, and offboarding from a hostile relationship or hostile marriage, and a hostile divorce or hostile divorce proceedings, and counter-parenting and parental alienation, and how that works hand in hand with a psychological abuser, emotional abuser, economic abuser, financial abuser. So we're going to talk on these topics today and why divorces are necessary, because we were talking about the last time in our coaching sessions about divorce and why it's good to divorce, and that meant financially, emotionally, sexually, mentally, and any which way you can possible from a narcissistic abuser, emotional abuser, psychological tormentor, poker, gaslighter, and things like that. So we're going to talk about the things that are part of relationships that even if you're in a common law marriage or a actual civil marriage or a union or whatnot that constitutes as something like a marriage, or you're actually literally on paperwork with a marriage license and you're dealing with the same exact contaminator, but you're dealing with toxic situations, or you're in a long-term relationship where you've been with someone for a number of years and it's becoming a hostile situation offboarding, or becoming a dangerous situation offboarding, or becoming a level and depth of a arduous, or for lack of better words, completely level of abuse going on in the offboarding of getting away from that person, or offboarding from them, or removing them from your life. And there's levels and depths of abuse and the different types of abuse that can happen. So we're going to have this uncomfortable conversation about why divorces happen and the hostilities that come from that, and why we offer the divorce packages or the relationship packages or the aftermath of divorce and whatnot, and also the aftermath of domestic violence programs that we have. Because the aftermath of having a hostile relationship or a hostile divorce, or what they call a psychologically damaging divorce from someone, whether it's a marriage, a long-term relationship, toxic relationship, emotionally abusive relationship, financially abusive relationship, economically abusive relationship, or a marriage that is in the toilet and it's been going south for a long time and one party's checked out or both parties checked out, or neither one wants the marriage anymore. Or it can be a whole thing of the one person's torturing the other person is no longer taking the other person's BS, and that person is just at that point that they are at a point of animosity and conflict, and they no longer want to be with the person because the more and more it culminates, it becomes dangerous. And then you have to recognize the actual signs of emotional abuse during a divorce, which means in any way, shape, or form, like I said, the examples of leaving a relationship, whether you're married or not, and recognizing the signs of emotional abuse during that divorce. And people who feel entitled to do the abusive antics while offboarding have a central tendency to like to play games, emotional head games, psychological head games, and they will have a tendency to want to continue to abuse. They'll use technology to abuse. They will use other forms of abuse by remote. They will continue to find ways to emotionally torment, provoke, and psychologically abuse. And not only will they continue to do it, they will do it by remote accessing computers, IP hacks, IT hacks, hidden networks. They will continue to go redirect phone numbers in business. If you're in business, they will attack you in any which way they can to elicit a level of response. And the thing I can tell you, the best thing is no response, document it as calmly as you possibly can, and then take it to court and criminally charge them for all the financial, economic abuse and the frustrations that they cause. And that's the reason why they do it. Because I'll give you the reasons why they feel entitled to do so. For one, that's entitlement. Two, they're narcissistic. Three, they're sociopathic, sadistic, and they pathologically have no ability to understand boundaries. And we're going to talk about understanding emotional abuse. Domestic abuse is a prevalent problem within intimate and familial relationships. It's also a problem in even teenage relationships and non-teenage relationships, in adolescent young adults, and even furthermore in adult relationships prior to marriage, or even in a marriage. And within intimate and familial relationships, according to surveys, roughly 25% of divorcees cite abuse as contributing factor to their divorce. And what I mean by divorce, it's like a divorce website. When you have a divorce website, right, you go and you have an auction. You're not thinking of your relationship as a divorce website, right, where you auction off something and the highest bidder, and you're hoping to have a good relationship and you're hoping you're not going to get a dud item or a dud husband. Same thing with a dud wife. But the thing is, more than likely, in my case, would be a dud husband or a horrible husband or a provoker, gaslighter, or a mental emotional abuser or a torturous person or a gaslighter or a provoker, right? So with that, you would cite 25% of that being for psychological abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, IT abuse, technology abuse, and levels and depths of financial abuse and coercive control, and continue to do smothering things or things to provoke or absolutely circumvent child custody or parental alienation, or using means and methods to circumvent that to promote levels of depths of trying to make someone look like they're crazy. And most of the time people find it hard to believe that somebody's abusing someone if they're absolutely doing it remote, right? So in this, roughly 25% of divorcees cite abuse, but you're thinking like a divorce website. You're hoping when you get married that you're not being married to a complete disgusting douchebag or a sociopath, psychopath, or a psychopath, sociopath, and wrapped in one, or a person who is wealthy, well-to-do, well-connected, and feels entitlement to abuse, psychologically, emotionally torment, or even use measures of remote hacking, IP hacking, IT hacking, or circumventing your phone lines to other business numbers and doing things like that, or continuing to find ways to get underneath your skin so you elicit a level of upset, hostility, and response so they could take it to court, file false charges, and things like that. And those are things that an emotional abuser, psychological tormentor, or a financially wealthy person will do so they can erode any validity to those claims in court. So according to surveys, with that roughly 25% and 25% physical violence cases against women, nearly 15% of those against men, this abuse will escalate to severe violence leading to critical harm or injury. In the worst forms, domestic abuse may end in death, and it correlates to higher rates of suicide or homicide, or what they call family-acide. When you have that dynamic, which is what I'm going to expound on, where family aside, where you have narc family or narc abusers within the family. Not all family members are like that, but some are. And you've got pathological narcissists, sociopaths who play nice out in the street, but everybody doesn't see the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or the Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde behind closed doors. It would take intel for someone to do that. That's what we talked about the last coaching about. And when you think about that, you're thinking about a person who's willing to go above and beyond to play nice out in the street. But when it comes behind closed doors, the psychopath, sociopath, the narc abuse, the provoke gaslight, the covert insidious abuse, the emotional abuse, the torment, the provoking, so they can get a elicited response, record your response, and then take it to court. So they can either cite, oh, there's something wrong, oh, he's nuts, or she's nuts, that kind of stuff. So by the time you're done with all of it, there's levels and depths of legal abuse being done, emotional abuse being done, and emotional Munchausen by proxy being done, so that they can sit there and have a invalid, frivolous court case, but use it against the person that they're doing it to, the target, say, aka me, right? So when you're looking at that prime example and the potential for the 8 tiers of homicide, and we'll go over that, how this happens, so that you see where the correlation with family aside, spousal abuse, domestic abuse, or domestic terrorism, or intimate partner violence comes into divorcing someone, whether it's a real divorce or divorcing someone emotionally, sexually, financially, business partner, business acquaintance, people like that pentameter or that echelon, or wealthy people who feel entitled to do that. And we'll go over recognizing emotionally abusive spouse or business acquaintance or family. So we'll talk about those different things of the habitual things that go on, or the pathologies of a person who's a pathological abuser, insidious abuser, covert, overt, or where they like to do things remote, so yet you can have a harder time proving it, but that means the training for the cops, the judges, the lawyers in between, kind of like the Betty Broderick story where how she snapped. And I had just done a coaching earlier today about how Betty Broderick went through that and she snapped on her husband. You're talking about a wealthy lawyer who has a lot of people, and every pentamer there is, there's what, police officers, you've got everybody else in echelons of medical, so he has his tentacles everywhere. But then he has a new wife, and then there's the parental alienation, then you have the undoing her parenting when the kids go to see the husband and the wife, and then threatening to take the kids from the wife, but crazy making her, and eventually she snaps. So now we're going to go into the 7 levels of homicide, how that works, and how a person can get to that point of snapped mode and absolutely do that. But in my case, I'm not at snap mode. I just left the situation, but that person continues to abuse and that pentameter. So you can understand the difference in coping mechanisms and learning to recognize it so you're better able to handle it and cope with it. And then when you're seeing someone that comes into my office, say myself, who has had experience in that personally, but also professionally gone into the blocks of that and understanding the dynamics of coercive control, financial abuse, economic abuse, can educate and advocate for you. Say, if the doctors on staff come and see you and they're seeing that you're exhibiting depression, you're exhibiting levels and depths of emotional torment, and you're feeling like levels of animosity, aggression, they can figure and pinpoint it forensically. Hey, what's wrong with this person? Well, I just saw them today, and they were just saying that they're having a hard time with their husband. Okay, why are they having a hard time with their husband? The who, what, when, where, and why, the forensics of who, what, when, where, and why, and asking our client, hey, what's been going on? Well, he torments me every day. This is what we were talking about the last coaching session. And when we ask, how is he tormenting you? Well, he accesses my phones without my authorization. Well, he accesses my IP addresses unauthorized. Okay, what else? I have a business. Okay, well, he's redirecting my phone lines, and he's redirecting them to other businesses. He's an IT specialist, so it means he knows how to do all this kind of stuff and uses the access points, and he redirects them to other phone numbers, to other places of business and impeding business. So there's the economic abuse example, and then there's the financial abuse and coercive control examples. So by the time the doctor understands this, so when it gets turned over to authorities, we're able to advocate for you in court before it gets to a Betty Project who didn't have that back then. That was what, back in the 80s. They didn't have the technology to know, okay, so-and-so is IP hacking, IT hacking, and doing this to abuse and emotionally abuse and torment his wife. So Betty Broderick has a different situation. Look at it like this. She's a typical American white wife, and she's not working. So she's financially dependent on her husband. So how is she able to take care of herself and her kids? She has to have alimony when she's divorcing her husband. So the husband doesn't want to pay the alimony. He's a lawyer. He's rich. So those are the examples of where that homicide came into the factor, because you got the narc by proxy, emotional Munchausen by proxy. You got the new wife, the narcissistic supply. So that's where we're going to go into those pentameters of hostile divorce and hostile takeover of parental alienation counter-parenting, and where that goes into the two-part mini-series that we'll be doing tonight or by tomorrow about all of this, because a part of this is to get you guys to understand the dynamics and pentameters of how relationships can go south of the border, because it's becoming a level of hostility, animosity, and it ends up in what these statistics are reading back of homicide. And where snapped, and you see the oxygen channel where they got the Betty Broderick story, and I suggest you guys look at that and see how this woman ended up in the pentameter that she's at and got railroaded, because you're thinking to yourself, she's the typical American white housewife. She's not working. I'm not saying all white women don't work. They do. There's plenty of successful white women, but it's the fact of the matter is that she was not working. She was financially, economically dependent on her husband. He knew that, so he doesn't want to pay the alimony, child support, because they've probably been married over a certain amount of time. So even at that, at a certain point when she's not working, he owes her alimony. So no matter what, he's still going to have to pay for her livelihood, her lifestyle. So he didn't want that. So you're thinking about these different things like that, and where you have to get TROs, temporary restraining orders, or you have to get one through an attorney. I don't think she's suspecting that she's going to be the target of his obsession to undermine her parenting, parental alienate, counterparent with the new narc supply by proxy, which is his new wife. And that's where that homicide came. So we're going to go over the 8 tiers of homicide so you guys understand how that goes down. And when you think about that kind of stuff and how dangerous it can be offboarding from a relationship. So we're going to go over the University of Gloucestershire, and this is from the UK, about the homicide timeline. So we're talking about pre-relationship history, criminal record, or allegations from former partners or control, domestic abuse or stalking. Victims often aware but do not always believe reports, right? So that's where you've reported it, or somebody's reported it to police officers. They didn't want to believe it. So then we're going to step 2, early relationship. The relationship was fed up with early declarations of love, and that's the love bombing. And then that was where the positiveness, and then you're cheerleading for that person, so everybody believes, oh, he's Prince Charming, he would never do that, he's never like that when we're around each other. Of course he's not going to act like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in front of everybody. So, sir, ma'am, I'll make you wait on that one. You're thinking to yourself, okay, he's not going to act a fool in front of y'all. Yeah, sure, good luck with that. Then we're going to relationship. Then it's dominated by coercive control, usually from some high risk markers or factors that are showing that he's doing this. But it's going to be in cities. It's going to be slow. So you're not going to see it up front. But then it's going to be starting to ask you, why are you spending money on this? Because I want to and I can. And then it's like, okay, why are you spending all money on this? Because this is what we need for household. Okay, then every time he can spend his money on what he wants to, but when it comes to your money, it's, why is the money going to that? Well, don't you do the same exact thing? Well, don't ask me what I do with my money. Don't count my paychecks. Okay, wait a minute. So, I can't count your paychecks, but you can count mine. Where would they do that at? Alright, so we're going on to triggers. Then we're talking about event occurrences, which the control of the perpetrator, usually separation, its potential may be physical or mental illness or financial problems that they're creating and manifesting within their target. So we're talking about that. Then we're talking about escalations. Then we're talking about the increase in frequency or severity of control tactics, like the threats, the begging the person back to the relationship, only to have people question why you went back. So you're talking about the trauma bond that gets established, and then you're talking about the Stockholm syndrome, thinking once they're love bombing you again, and you go back to it, so therefore you feeling guilty and everything else. Then everybody crazy makes and asks, oh, why'd you go back? Why'd you go back if he's so bad? Because he acted nice and I thought he was changed. Okay, so then you go on to, after somebody's asked for a friend, well, why'd you stay in a relationship like that? Because he sat there and played the role. Okay, so then we're going on to changing thinking. Feelings of revenge, injustice, or humiliation may drive a decision to resolve issues through either moving on, revenge, or potential homicide. So we're talking about all the parental alienation, the counter-parenting, the provoked gaslight. He's got everybody on his side. So we're talking about the levels of homicide that Betty's at, right? So we've moved on down to planning. I don't think there was premeditation in Betty Broderick's situation, but in some cases when you have the narc who's planning to kill, they've been planning it since day one because, one, you outed them about their behavior. Two, they don't like that everybody is seeing through their narcissistic mask. And now everybody's seeing them for who they are. And after you explain, I went back to them because they acted nice. Now he started again. So now you've answered for a friend, right? Why you went back? Okay. So now people understand that he's a narc-hole. So is the new girlfriend. So is the new wife. Yeah, that was a little late, but yeah. So then we're talking about the homicide. That's where everything has balled up to levels and depths of provoke, gaslight, and we've gone through intervals of steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6. And then we're going through those intervals several times before it escalates to 7 and then 8. So we're talking about a crisscross of this going on and on and on. And then we're getting to a emotional Munchausen by proxy situation. So then you're talking about the kids that get involved. So you're adding another fuel to the fire, right? So let's break this down in pentameter. You not only added a layer of sauce on there, right? We're not talking about the good old McRib sauce. We're talking about no McDonald's dipping sauce. We're talking about some old, nasty old ranch sauce. So we're going to keep it light. I don't want you guys to get depressed while you're listening to this. So we've talked about how bad the sauce is, right? So everybody's lost in the sauce. Everybody's thinking, okay, what's going on in their household? Nobody's seeing it on the outside, but all they're hearing is, he was great, he was great, he was great, until she kills him, right? Okay, so Betty Broderick got to that point, right? So she blows both their heads off, off them smithereens. So we're looking at a pentameter of a cycle of parental alienate counterparenting by the narc, and then the narc wife by proxy, and then we've got, okay, I'm gonna get you, sucker, and now it's like, Adrian,
Finish him!
finish him, and she did. So we're talking about when you're leaving a marriage that is becoming very, very bad. You're becoming more and more hostile. You're calling to behaviors such as hitting, choking, or kicking. If that's not occurring, but the emotional abuse, you might as well hit and punch the person, right? You're talking about all these punches, right? Mental punches. Think about as you're listening to me as I'm talking and somebody punching you like that. So you're getting punched like this mentally. How hard is that person getting punched? So that means you're taking that many mental blows. So you can classify that as abusive. So the best case resolution for these type of things is a divorce from them, whether it's physical, emotional, financial, sexual, any which way there is possible. No more getting back together. That means going no contact. That means absolutely getting to a point that there is no levels of contact, even if there's parenting. That means the parenting apps that weren't designed back then for Betty Broderick or people like that who have been on Snapped or have been on episodes of you've seen on the ID channel where people have gone to deadly women or even deadly men or fatal vows, fatal obsession, fatal attraction. Then you're talking about levels and depths where was the mitigation between the police departments, the judges, the lawyers, because they're not educated enough. So you can't really blame the cops. But then again, it's like, dude, did you not have the CEUs at this point in time when somebody's called you for the 11th time about their husband or their ex-husband and things like that? Because that's establishing a pattern that this person has. So then we're talking about the behaviors and things like that. So it's more superstitious or superstitious form of domestic abuse that is often overlooked, emotional abuse. So we're talking about that part, the part that nobody ever talks about. We're talking about Munchausen by proxy. We're talking about psychological warfare elicited that's normally not used at a civilian level. So we're talking about people who are using this: narcissists, narcopaths, sociopaths, psychopaths, or people who are not even designated APD or MPD, which is antisocial personality disorder, or NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. So basically, the byproduct of that is borderline personality disorder, and that's where reactive abuse syndrome, or you're seeing narcissistic abuse syndrome, where the narc hole and the narc hole by proxy. You gotta laugh at the creeping crime sometimes. The narc hole by proxy elicit levels of response in the person who's being victimized. So you're talking about the side pieces that come along and the narc hole decides that he's going to sleep around. Or if you got vice versa, a woman who's going to sleep around. So then they get their by proxy to do all the provoke and gaslight. So the poor person who's on the other end, receiving end, say for example myself, who's not cheating or going through that, or Betty Broderick, who's not doing any of that, is being done up by the narc hole and narc hole by proxy. All right, so we have to keep rhyming yet again. So we're moving forward, right? So by the time you're looking at all of this and you're adding that much toxic sauce to already boiling over hostility and divorcing, then you're adding kids and you're threatening to take kids, you're provoking, you're using the county and the city, municipalities to sit there and provoke, gaslight that person who may not have the means to defend themselves financially, economically. So, oh, I forgot, if you're a business person and you've got a rich husband, rich lawyer husband, or well-connected police officer, then what's going to happen? Nobody's going to listen to you. What are they going to do? They're going to listen to narc hole A, narc hole B, and all the rest of the narcs by proxy, flying monkeys, who are going to sit there and listen to the levels of provoke gaslight to go and pad his case against who? Victim A, me, or Betty, victim B. So you're looking at those type of situations, and these are examples. So when you're thinking about these different things, emotional abuse, often the best case resolution for domestic emotional abuse is divorce, because they're not going to stop, because they'll even still do it remote. What I meant by technology abuse, and we'll go over that. And then the emotional abuse continues through the divorce process. Your attorney or will file for a temporary restraining order or TRO, and sometimes it will become lifetime if it's established and it's able to be proven by a private investigator that it's going on. There's technological abuse, psychological abuse by any means, communication devices, cell phones, IP hacks, IT hacks, all that kind of stuff, network and things like that, things that were done actually to me in real time and real life, and it was ongoing. And the thing is, just like example, the narc hole that I was dealing with was actually redirecting phone lines, all of my business lines, to other businesses. And it's actually recently happened. And it wasn't funny. And the thing is, I had to document it in real time for other people to see exactly what he was doing. And the worst part about it, that person's never going to stop until we go back to court. So when you're dealing with someone like that, that's the type of person that's not going to stop. They're using technology to abuse because he has an IT background. So of course he's not going to stop. His family's not going to stop, especially if his daddy's in an IT background. So then you're talking about levels of well-connected, wealthy people who do things like that. So, which is renewable every 14 days until a temporary order can be put in place with a mutual injunction to prevent such behavior, or sometimes a one-way injunction because, of course, people like me don't want anything to do with that person, and we're offboarding hostile, and there's no levels and depths of I ever want you back. So we're looking at go away, take your narc hole by proxy, and go away. So Betty wasn't strong enough to say that. You understand what I'm saying? She couldn't cope with that, so her best resort was, I'm going to go, Adrian!
Finish him!
She finished him, all right, and his wife. Not funny, but funny, right? So you think about those different things like that, where a woman gets to that point, she has no other resort, and she's feeling some type of way because he's threatened to take the kids. He's provoked her. She's at the point, you know what? You want to go? I play rough. We're going to play rough. And she finished him. And I feel sorry for the lady because I think of it in my own situation that I afforded from, but it's still narc by proxy foolishness that goes on because the other by proxies are the flying monkeys that were mad because he got outed, and others that were adjacent attached to him, and their private business came out because of him. But then I got to be a target of their obsession because they benefited from all his narc hole behavior. So, yeah, here's the narc holes. That's better than saying, asshole. Yeah, I'm on a roll today, yeah. So I just want you guys to have a good time while we're listening and learning and things like that. So as a coach, I want you guys to understand we're trying to relate. I want you guys to relate without wanting to cry, because I know a lot of y'all listen to these things and some of y'all are going through it current time, real time. I want y'all to be able to cope with the stark raving madness that it causes, the emotional torment it causes, and the levels of... Let me do it one more for the road. Because my voice is all messed up and I can't scream at the top of my lungs like I want to. So, understanding emotional abuse. Emotional abuse can be just as dangerous as physical abuse, as is often accompanied by escalates as physical abuse as well. Emotional abuse includes methods that weaken or break down victims as just as effectively as physical abuse, but without leaving an actual mark. But it leaves a mental mark. And I want you guys to understand what mental marks mean. It means that it leaves a scar, and it's like a scar that's infected. It's like sepsis in the blood, except for you got to get it sucked out, or you got to have the blood replenished, right? So it's not like you can hook your brain up to a machine and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to fix it. Yeah, get you fixed up like Obamacare. Yeah. It doesn't work like that. So you have to think about that. And that's where you come see coaches like me that bridge the gap. And then you see psychiatrists, psychologists that are on board who are going to help you figure it out and unpack it. Your MSWs, your LSWs, your psychiatrists, your psychologists, your specialist clinics, like I ended up having to go to off-board and go into recovery. And this is why I'm walking you guys through it and dedicating my life to this as part of my life's work and my life's journey. Because as I'm going to school for my master's in diplomacy and conflict resolutions and management, as well as onto my PsyD and psychiatry, psychology, and forensic management and things like that, I want for you guys to understand, as I'm able to have a license to treat you guys and diagnose and things like that, I've been through it as a actual patient, and I know how it feels. I know how you all feel. I know what it feels like to have to go through this. Emotional abuse does something to you. It actually changes you long term. It makes you feel like your life is falling apart and you have no control. So at that point in time, you're at this. One more for the road. One more again. One more. Okay. So now you understand what it feels like. Because the person is tormenting you and torturing you and taking you up to the levels and depths of insanity and trying to make you go insane and make you have a nervous breakdown. And it happens to anybody and everybody. There's a lot of professionals in this world who will tell you they've been through it. They were doctors. There are lawyers. There are people who've gone through this, because it doesn't matter if you have a degree. A degree does not matter to a narc. They don't care. Okay? They don't care. Narc-holes and narc-holes by proxy don't care, and flying monkeys. Okay? So when you're thinking about that, it doesn't leave a mark, but it leaves a mental mark. So it means your brain has to rewire, and your body does remember. Your body remembers every last blow, mental, emotional blow that they've inflicted on you. So it's like these punches, right? Do you hear how loud those punches are? Think about your brain getting knocked around a couple of good times, and it's going on. That's cycle 2. Do you hear how loud that punch is? So it means you're getting punched around like that multiple times, and you're expecting someone to be emotionally together by the time it's all said and done. You're at this point. So by the time you write it all down, sitting at a psychiatrist, psychologist's office, and he's sitting up there writing, or she's sitting up there writing, and you're in my office. So what's going wrong with you today? My husband's driving me nuts. Okay. So why is he driving you nuts? Well, he's emotionally abusing me. Okay. How? Well, he's accessing my IP addresses. He's turning around, making sure all my phone lines go to different places of business, like Straight Talk or everywhere else, or Track Phone. Okay. What else is he doing? He's getting in my house, unlocking my doors, and I didn't give him the key. Okay, what else is he doing, ma'am? Well, I'm asleep at night, and he's cutting me while I'm asleep. So those are all the mental punches. So you're listening to that, and somebody's telling you what they're doing. So you're being mentally punched and tormented, right? One's physical, but the rest of them were remote. Accessing IPs, redirecting phone lines, but all of those are pentameters of levels of homicide that this person is displaying as a red flag towards me, or AKA Betty Broderick. But he's well connected and wealthy, right? So you're thinking about all of this while you're divorcing, right? Those are the reasons for a restraining order. But recognizing emotional abuse by a spouse are hard to recognize. And we're going to go over that in the next session for you guys to understand that. Because part of this is many abusers instead erode the will, esteem, and support systems of their partners in order to control them. So the reason why that happens is that nobody wants to believe that somebody's willing to go that far to provoke gaslight and emotionally abuse and erode their resolve, and then you erode your ability to be nice. So instead of saying, honey, stop doing what you're doing, you're like, honey, stop doing what you're doing. Honey, stop doing what you're doing. Honey, stop doing what you're doing. Then you're like, ah! So you're like at this high-pitched scream, right? One more for the road. So you've been psychologically punched how many times? So we're going to go back and forth with this. See how crazy that sounds? Do you know how much of that crazy make would go and make somebody nut up? That's what happens with you're dealing with a monarch. So you're seeing that cycle, and that's how it's mentally going in your head. So that's scarring. Layers and layers of that scarring. So it's not stopping. So what happens eventually? Reactive abuse syndrome and narcissistic abuse syndrome, where you're seeing cussing them out. You beep, 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 or you're seeing it on social media. You beep, 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 you this, that, and the other, beep, 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 beep. But what does narc do? Narc 1, narc by proxy 2, and the rest of the narcs do? They go to court and tell lies. And they use that as legal abusive means to sit there and erode and say, oh, she's so crazy, she's nuts. Or if it's a man, he's nuts. I had a client, I'm not going to disclose his name, who asked about his narc wife, and she was doing that to him. And she would set him up to go get the kids and then turn around and then call the cops on him. I told him to resort to getting an app, and they no longer meet each other or have a third party do a handoff because she was trying to make sure that he was going to be eroded in any which way there was possible, and she kept setting him up. So at that point, we're talking about levels and depths of mental scarring, trying to get him to react, and eventually probably knock the stew out of her. And so that's what happens with narcs, online, offline, and insidious abuse. So we're going to go into the next session and we're going to talk about how to recognize this with a spouse or non-spouse or in a relationship and the dynamics of how that works in session 2. So we're going to take you out of here with some good music.